forward to the questions that will shape the next decades of our field. We've invited speakers who have lived, researched, created, and transformed media in different ways, and we hope these conversations open new paths of thought for all of us. So I'd like to also acknowledge the UPCMC Office of Research and Development, or ORP, and of course Alex Tamayo. We've been working hard to organize these talks and events, but more importantly, we've been publishing Plaridel Journal and our UPCMC book series on media and communication. These platforms help sustain the research culture of the college, and we're grateful for the support they give to both established and emerging scholars. We're also truly happy that you're with us to mark this milestone, which will eventually, hopefully, become a publication. Your presence makes the anniversary more meaningful, and your participation helps carry forward the spirit of inquiry that we want to nourish. So this afternoon, we're very pleased to have two presenters. The first presenter bringing with him a couple of films, and of course, our beloved assistant professor bilang pangalawang presenter. So let me introduce them. Or one at a time. I'll introduce the first guest. So our first presenter guest this afternoon is filmmaker and editor Michael Lacanilao, whose work moves between philosophy, film practice, and the shifting terrain of media cultures. Many first encountered his storytelling through the earlier version of the Escherian Stairwell, a thesis film that unexpectedly grew into a viral modern myth and later became the basis of a deeper reflection on belief, knowledge, and the blurring of truth and fabrication in the digital age. This afternoon, he will be sharing a brief history of the Escherian Stairwell, which is his meditation on how a student project from 2012 foreshadowed our present struggles with disinformation and the fragile boundaries between fact and myth. So let's all give a round of applause to Michael Lacanilao.
Thanks so much, Sir Patrick. I'm actually just recording this for my own records kasi I've actually, me and some people who have been helping me at different times throughout the year, have been touring this for about a year now. Itong project na to we started November 2024. We've done about 40 plus screenings. I didn't even realize na it's been a year until sa Facebook ko it said yung memories, yung 1 year. Wow, 1 year na pala to. But yeah, so I actually, so that's why I'm recording. I just want to make this quick. Actually, I just want to make this really quick. Kasi as a filmmaker, the film is the main thing. So I just want to get to it and just start showing it na. Just for some, it's actually two films. Two films. The first film is a film I made when I was a film student sa US noong 2012. Nag-viral siya at the time. And then 10 years later, at the height of the 2022 Philippine elections, nag-viral siya ulit. This time primarily on Marcos and Duterte-backed TikTok accounts. So if you were on TikTok at the time, there were these co-op campaign TikTok channels. If you're on TikTok at the time, siguro napanood nyo na. And actually, it was the #1 viewed video on those accounts by millions of views. Like more than any Italiano Gold video, more than any Lenny bashing video, more than any video about the martial law glory years. It was consistently on those accounts the most viewed video. So that's what I want to show for now, just for some context, yung 6-minute film. And then after that, we'll show the main film, the film we're here for, the 30-minute film, which was made during that time. Pero for now, quick intro lang, 6 minutes, and then intro ko yung next film after this. Thank you again. Play ko pala. Sir, pahiram po nung remote. Yung audio lang aanahin ko. Sorry.
Welcome to this episode of Can You Imagine, where we spotlight some of the cool things about the Rochester Institute of Technology as we gear up for Imagine RIT, the university's Innovation and Creativity Festival.
That's right, it's where the left brain and the right brain collide. So set your calendars for Saturday, May 4th from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. Don't forget, it's free and open to the public.
That's right, Stephanie. It's going to be great. Bring your family, bring your friends. You don't want to miss this.
Yeah. This is the 6th year. This year will
That's
be.
right.
And last year was a good time.
We had a ball playing with the fluidic.
Yeah.
Fun with fluid.
Fluids,
Awesome.
yeah. There was some live entertainment. We made a good day out of it.
We did. We had a lot of fun.
All right. So today on Can You Imagine, we are going to be looking at the Assyrian stairwell, which has been around RIT for quite a while, but no one seemed to know about it, did they?
That's right.
All right. So Kevin went out and looked at it last week. Check it out.
Where is the Assyrian stairwell?
The what?
I don't know. The what?
Do you know where the Assyrian stairwell is?
The library?
Malaysia.
You should know. You're a tour guide, right?
I don't know what that is.
You're a tour guide.
ESCH.
Yeah, maybe.
Wait, Asharian.
ASHA. Steyr. I know Steyr.
How come you haven't heard of this?
I don't really research stairwells that often, I guess. I don't know.
I said I don't like look at that in my free time.
Yeah.
Here we are in the Assyrian stairwell. Located in Building 7, one of the first structures put up when RIT made the move from downtown Rochester to suburban Henrietta. The stairwell, designed by Filipino architect Rafael Nelson of Uganda, was built in 1968 and has been wowing RIT students ever since. One of the coolest things is bringing people here and watching them experience it for the first time. Today we are here with Rosie. Am I saying that correctly?
Yep.
Okay. And you are a grad student in what program?
Yeah, exactly. Program?
Yeah.
Print media.
Okay, so have you been here before to the stairwell?
This area?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay. Have you heard about it?
No, never.
Okay. Never. Okay.
Never.
But what I want you to do is just walk up the stairs and wait for me on the next floor.
Just go upstairs.
Go on up. There you go.
That's it?
That's it. Just keep walking. You get to the top. Rosie! What are you doing here? So that you can see that each step is a flat surface parallel to the ground, and that you are actually ascending or descending the stairs, and that they are not somehow canted or tilted, try doing it with a glass of water in your hand. Hi, Rosie.
My wife went to RIT here and
Oh, really?
graduated in 2002, and she mentioned it to us. And I appreciate it's more of an art.
Yeah. It's just an architectural trick, that's all.
It's insane. It's like, I don't know. Like I just get really confused every time I do it. But it's kept asking where the class was, and I kept pointing them towards the staircase. I would tell them to, go up a couple flights and everything, come back out, and then you should be at your classroom. And they were freaked out. Like,
Oh, the staircase thing! Like you can't ever
There you go.
go.
So you have heard of it. You have heard of it.
I've been there. I've been there, yeah. I'll race you to the top. That's what I would tell them.
Hey, sir, what's your name? Hey, Dwayne. You here with your family? Yeah. Yeah? Where are you from? Liking it? Do I dance again? Okay, no.
I like that.
Okay. You don't have a twin brother, do you?
No.
Okay.
Just me.
Okay.
All right.
Well, I will see you downstairs then, all right?
Winnie!
Hey.
Oh, put it here, man.
I don't know what to do. I don't know what that means.
The Assyrian stairwell. What fun.
It was.
Good. What was your favorite thing?
I really get a real kick out of running around and trying to see if I can see the back of my own head.
Nice. Any luck with that?
So far, not yet, but
All
the
right.
day's still young.
Good.
So, thanks for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you at Imagine RIT on May 4th from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m.
Yep, don't forget, there's going to be food tents, live entertainment. We're expecting over 35,000 people. It'll be a good time.
That's right. It's going to be big. It's going to be great. It's going to be a lot of fun. For more information, check out our webpage at rit.edu/imagine.
All right, that's all for now. Take care.
Thanks a lot. See you later.
Okay, so thanks so much for watching that. So yun yung thesis ko nung 2012. I'm curious, has anyone seen it? People have seen this na? Yeah. So like I said, nag-viral siya nung 2012, 2013, around that time. Tapos 10 years later, at the height of the Philippine elections, nag-viral siya ulit, primarily on Marcos and Duterte-backed TikTok accounts. Any guesses kung bakit kaya ginamit ito for those in those accounts? Any thoughts on that? So kung naaalala nyo, yung mga accounts na yon are very nationalistic, di ba? Very patriotic. So they were really playing up yung Filipino ingenuity. Kung nakita, kasi Filipino architect, di ba? So if you watch if you saw those videos, it was always hashtag proud to be Pinoy. Fist, fist, fist emoji, flag, flag, flag emoji, yung ganon. And it was a very confusing time for me kasi on one hand, I felt very conflicted. On one hand, it's very exciting when a film you made is getting millions of views again 10 years later. On the other hand, I was really disturbed by the fact na my film was being churned out as part of this propaganda machine. So I was trying to figure out how this weird cocktail of feelings. Tapos, as this went viral, nag-viral siya sa Iran, Turkey, Russia, Italy, sunod-sunod. These different countries, it started going viral. So it was in this context na I made the film that we're about to see, the second film. It was a way for me kasi there was so much attention on the film ulit. And never ko in-explain kung bakit ito yung thesis ko, ano ba yung purpose niya, bakit yan yung napili mong thesis. Except for, syempre, yung thesis committee ko sa school. So for the first time, I found an opportunity to articulate my reasons for making this film, for why this is my thesis, and reasons that were suddenly very relevant to the time. So that's what this film about, this 30-minute film. Yeah, we're gonna watch it all the way to the end credits. Mga 2 minutes lang naman yung credits. Pero you could use that time, hopefully, while watching the credits to just absorb what you've seen, process, and digest, and think about how you feel and what you think of the ideas and concepts that are brought up. So hopefully we can have a discussion about it. Ayun. The only thing I ask when we're watching this film, okay, the only thing I ask of all of you as we're watching this film is for your full concentration while watching it. Because it's really the type of film that the ideas that are talked about will need some focus and attention. Now, I think ultimately the ideas are very simple, but it needs some concentration to really get into it. So obviously that would mean no phones, please, no talking, no standing up and moving around as much as possible. As you're watching, 100% of the time, I always see this. People have a very, very, very strong urge to Google while they're watching it. Please resist that urge. Google as much as you want while during the credits or after the film. Pero during the film, let's not pull out our phones. Ano pa ba? Anything else? Yes, so we did a tech rehearsal yesterday and watched this. And I sat in every single chair while we played everything. And I realized that this row right here is the best place to watch the film, yung second row. So if any of you are looking for that, second row middle. Ayan, so feel free to move. Okay? So yun lang. And feel free to move right now. Go ahead. And then we'll talk ulit in 30 minutes. Kamusta naman dyan yung volume? Parang when I sat at the back, nalakasan ako eh. Okay lang? People at the back? Okay, sige. Okay, thank you. We'll play this.
It's worth making a distinction between two types of knowledge, namely a priori knowledge and a posteriori knowledge. A priori knowledge pertains to the types of things we can know through reason alone, the sort of knowledge we can have without needing to make observations or conduct experiments. For instance, all bachelors are unmarried, or all triangles have 3 sides. Based on what we mean by the word bachelor, there could never be a married bachelor. Based on what we mean by the word triangle, and based on what we mean when we say 4 sides, there could never, ever be a 4-sided triangle. We don't need to go out into the world and conduct surveys, observations, or experiments in order to confirm these things. We know them by pure reason. A posteriori knowledge, on the other hand, refers to the things we come to know after observation. For instance, our knowledge that the sky is blue, or that the mass of Mars is 6.4171 times 10 to the 23rd kilograms, or that Leni Robredo is vice president of the Philippines. We actually have to go out into the world and investigate in order for us to find out these things. We cannot deduce, for instance, that Leni Robredo is vice president by simply ruminating on the concept of vice presidency or analyzing the meaning of the name Leni Robredo. In order for us to know that she is vice president, we actually have to have some outside knowledge of the world. It's not the sort of thing we can know simply by contemplation and staying completely inside our heads. A priori is a Latin term meaning from earlier or prior, as in the knowledge we gain prior to observation. A posteriori means from after, as in the knowledge we gain after observation. The idea for the Ascherian stairwell began with a deep anxiety about how to discern truth from falsity. In 2012, I was a graduate student at the Rochester Institute of Technology's film program, trying to figure out what my thesis would be. My main area of study had been realism. I was enamored with the films of Mikhail Haneke and the Dardenne brothers and the Romanian New Wave, filmmakers who worked in fiction but had developed a keen eye for observing their environment and reproducing it on screen as realistically as possible. I was intent on learning how to make these kinds of films, which I viewed as a kind of cinematic equivalent to the hyper-realist pencil drawings of Paul Cadden or the paintings of Richard Estes. In filmmaking, you mine for those realistic nuances with frame composition and lighting and editing and dialogue.
Are you gay now?
I don't know. I don't know.
Trying to figure out why you had a hammer in the first
But most of all with the naturalism of the performances.
Why have the hammer?
Thank you.
Are you using that dandruff shampoo I bought you?
Yes.
Barry.
Camille's in the shot, right? Yeah, currently right now. Or she's okay standing there.
Am I okay here?
Yeah, I mean, it's gonna be in the shot.
I'll move this.
No, you're good, yeah. Maybe just overlap.
Here.
Is my hair
That's fine.
yes?
Yeah.
Fine, all stupid looking?
Isaac, for this one, let's try to skip. We didn't see it open in the shot. We didn't see the laptop open in the shot. But it's fine, we've got it, but I just want for this time. Alright, so this is the last time you guys are ever gonna do this scene. Good or bad?
Alright, let's go.
Just see it. Alright? Yeah.
Which part of sound do I need to focus?
This is picking them up, right? This is picking up those guys.
Yeah, it's picking up. I mean, it doesn't go that far. I mean, you're getting.
I mean, which part is
But the
more
thing is,
important?
you can
for
use
this
other
shot?
audio. You can use
Because
other
they're out of
audio.
focus
They're out of
anyway, it
focus.
doesn't matter
Yeah.
if they're. Alright, so just boom, Isaac.
Okay.
Boom, Isaac.
Here are some of those early works as we were trying to get a handle on realism.
Get a call.
You guys, the bus is here now. Let's go. Shut up. Piper, get your shoes on right now. Piper, cut it out.
As we got better at this, I started to become uncomfortable with what the motion picture medium was capable of. At some point, I realized that there were artists who could get so good at realism as to make it extremely difficult, if not impossible, for the audience to determine whether they were watching a work of fiction or a documentation of an actual event.
I know. You're making me nervous. Get out of my light. I can't see anything.
In class, we were shown films like No Lies and Delusions in Modern Primitivism, fake documentaries that were done so well and in which the acting was so good that I was actually fooled into believing they were real.
And he's going to take you to the hospital. Sure, I can dig it out. Absolutely, it's going to be in that. It's going to be in that center.
I remember feeling a kind of existential panic when our teachers told us afterwards that these were actually scripted works of fiction that were done with actors.
Your friendly neighborhood race.
It bothered me that I could not trust my own judgment in determining what was real and what was not.
I know you wouldn't believe that.
If I could so easily be led astray in an area I had been studying for years, how much worse could it get, and how often had I been duped before?
You're okay. God damn.
It is 6 o'clock on Monday morning, April 23rd. Here's our...
I sank deeper into a sort of Cartesian skepticism about the media we consume. How do I know when the news is real? How do I determine that I'm not watching a carefully scripted, rehearsed, and impeccably performed work of fiction? How does one ever determine that? How do I know when something is a documentation of an actual event? How do I know that I'm not looking at a computer-generated image?
Now, tell me which Obama here is real.
To help families refinance their homes, to invest in things like high-tech manufacturing, clean energy, and the infrastructure that creates good new jobs.
Anyone? The answer is none of them. None of these is actually real.
framed it around the question of whether the internet had grown too quickly, like a laboratory experiment gone wrong, not necessarily in its breadth of information, but in its role in our lives. I worry about how we determine what we believe, I told the thesis committee.
for focusing on it and for being here. It's also, uwi na kayo? Sige. Ay, hindi. Balik lang kayo. Okay. Yeah, so it's always medyo awkward for me to start talking after watching a film. Kasi for me, I don't know about you, pero for me as an audience member, a lot of times after I watch a film, I feel like the most appropriate response, the most appropriate activity to do afterwards is to just sit quietly and absorb it, digest it. But for me, that's the type of that's how I like to respond to films. So it's always a little weird to start talking about it. Pero having said that, it's really, really special for me to be here kasi syempre, karamihan ng nanonood ng films ko are online. I never get to be in the same room with them. I never get to interact with them, see their reactions. So it's always so special for me to watch a film with the audience. So I get to talk to you, you get to ask me questions, I get to ask you questions. So yeah, so thank you for being here. Ano pa ba? Yeah. Okay, so maybe we can set up, I'll do some setup for discussion because there's so many ways we can enter a discussion. And here's one starting point. Siguro, just to set up. May time pa naman tayo, diba? Sige. Okay. So one question that's really interesting kasi a lot of people ask me this, especially artists. Is anyone here an artist? Kahit anong art, dance, music, poetry. Yeah? Okay. All right. Sige. Great. So especially artists, they ask me this type of question. They come up to me and they say, how do you feel about people saying na itong buong project na to is not art? How do you feel about that? For me, I don't really feel any particular way about it. I'm not offended if people say that this isn't art. Pero what it does do for me is it makes me really think hard about what art is and what the role of an artist is. Like, it causes me to think about that. Is this art? What is art? I've always thought of myself as an artist. So what really is my role as an artist? How do I see it? What am I doing? And I think part of why it's so hard to articulate what art is because artist and art exists in the gaps, in the inarticulable gaps, you know? And I think so much of what you're doing as an artist is you are exploring those gaps, kind of prodding, asking questions that aren't being asked, telling stories that aren't being told, reckoning with emotions that people aren't dealing with. You know, so I think so if you've ever made art, you know, I think a lot of what artists do, for me, this is what the experience of making art is like. Normally, there's this overwhelming thing, this overwhelming feeling, this overwhelming pain, this overwhelming euphoria, this overwhelming grief, something really overwhelming, and all you're trying to do when you're making art is just hold it. Yun yung art. You're just trying to hold that thing, that film, or yung poem na yun, or yung song na yun. Just hold it and sit with it and look at it from every angle. Ayun lang, yun yung art. So for me, like the overwhelming thing for me, nung 2012, the major overwhelming thing for me was this deep anxiety about how do I navigate the world? How do I know what's real, what's not? Di ko na alam kung ano yung totoo. It was just this overwhelming feeling of like, what's the world going to become? And parang, why is no one else worried about this? How am I the only one who's scared about this? And this project was a way of like expressing those fears and anxieties. This whole project, lahat yung fake documentary, yung science show na napanood nyo, all the supporting online materials, asking our friends to comment. That whole project was really just me like, trying to hold that anxiety and sitting with that anxiety and looking at it from every angle and really like looking at it. Kasi we spend so much of our lives not wanting to deal with things, not wanting to look at things that are really hard and painful. This was so like overwhelmingly scary for me. I just wanted to look at it, this fear. So that's what it is for me. What it's not, and it surprises me na it gets misunderstood this way. What it's not for me, anyway, it's not a litmus test of whether or not you're a critical thinker. Naniwala ka ba o hindi? Okay, ito yung, it's not, it doesn't matter whether or not you believed it or not. Maybe you didn't believe this, pero you have other false beliefs, I'm sure. So it's really, it's a bigger, the questions are still relevant. The questions it brings up about why do we believe the things we believe? What reasons do we have for believing the things we believe? Those are relevant whether or not you believe this particular one. Or, and what it's not is, ayun. So I guess that's a setup siguro, just short artist statement of what this is about. And we can, open. Ay. Sige. Losing my voice a little.
Yeah. So, okay, I welcome questions. Okay, Alab, mauna ka na. Yeah, may mic sa harap para alam ko may mga hindi nag-Filipino dito, so baka lalaban ka sa English.
So very interesting kasi pati ako naloko noong una. Because I remember that video clip from way back nung bata ako. So it made me rethink, am I watching the same thing or not? But what I wanted to ask is, since the short film and your project is kind of like a prototype of what came to be now, na ang dami ng augmented reality stuff sa internet where they intend to misinform talaga, kahit na for entertainment purposes. It's like a game now to a lot of people. And parang I want to ask your thought process, or parang not so much thought process, but like how you reflect on it now as someone that's made this project like 10 years ago or so. Now, do you ever feel the sense of responsibility that you were able to cause this much virality, like unintentionally or not? Parang, what are your reflections on that? Since I feel like a lot of people then, since we're in a social media world, a lot of our posts, whether we intend to or not, can affect a lot of people, and it will also distort yung truth. So parang we all have that shared responsibility now. So how do you reflect on that with yourself now, 10 years after?
Yeah. Thank you for that great question. So it's actually a very good question, and I've been asked that before, na something along the lines of like, how do you feel na itong project na to served as a kind of blueprint for how to create disinformation or things like that? How do I feel about that? I don't think that's true necessarily. I don't think this was a blueprint for that. I don't think, kasi it was in the air. It was in the air, this anxiety that I was feeling. And I think a lot of people were seeing these vulnerabilities in social media. Kasi this was around 2012, so if you think around that time, by 2014, there was Cambridge Analytica. There were all these things that came up that decided to exploit those vulnerabilities for political reasons, for nefarious reasons. That's what they did with those vulnerabilities. Ako naman, as an artist, I expressed those things through this project. So I don't think that we invented this information. I think it was in the air, and people did different things in those gaps they were seeing. And this is my reaction to seeing those gaps. This was the reaction. Some people made troll farms. Some people did that. Some people did other things. So yeah, so that's how I really feel about it. Yeah. Anyone else? Ay, sorry.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, in many ways, zeitgeist nga siya, no? So, because hoaxes have been around, but each kind of new medium. So, in many ways, you were just there at that time doing that. Yeah, please ask your question.
Hypothetically po, if you were to make this film ulit ngayon, kasi right now po kasi napapag-aralan ko rin po yung ibang filmic theories on how film should also embrace the idea na wag nating i-create yung illusion na yun dahil isa na siyang propaganda machine ng Hollywood. if you were to make this film now, would you approach this with a more blunt approach na talagang sasabihin nyo sa audiences na this is fake, or would you still maintain that sort of illusion na totoo nga yung hindi ko masabi yung word, Escherian na stairwell?
Yeah, sure.
I scared ako dun sa yeah. No, that's a great question then. Thank you for that. And very, very relevant question, diba? And what you asked is I'm sure some people are feeling it now kasi I always hear recently, especially very recently, a version of this question about AI and to what extent are these platforms responsible for telling you whether this is generative AI or not. Yeah, that's actually, where do I begin with this? Parang ang daming pwedeng pasukan na angle. So if you think back to your parents' generation, your grandparents' generation, the way their relationship with information when they were growing up, if it's on TV, it's true, di ba? Kung nasa dyaryo, it's true. Kung nasa radyo, it's true. It's a very, very simple, stable relationship with information, di ba? And it was, passably functional for a time, for a few generations. We were okay with that. Pero think about, so they had that very stable relationship, like almost a blind faith relationship with information, diba? But think about the types of habits of mind, the types of psychological behavior that develops. If you have that type of relationship with information for years and decades and for generations, there's this muscle in your brain that's really meant to grapple with what's real and what's not. That's meant to wrestle with, is this true or is this not? And that's a very healthy thing to use, that part of your brain, I think it's a very human thing to grapple with what's real and what's not. And if you grew up like me, and you were just spoon-fed what to believe, you were told all your lives what to believe and what to think, then that part of your brain, that muscle that's meant to grapple with what's real and what's not, was never used. It atrophied, And I think that's really an individual responsibility. It's part of adulting to grapple, to do the hard work of untangling what's real from what's not, from rigorously going through the evidence and seeing how the puzzles fit. I think that's part of being human. That's part of what it means to exist, diba? Well, that responsibility, if you grew up like me, was just ripped away from you. You never got to use it. Hindi mo nagamit yung muscle na yun. So what happens then when you grow up and you're faced with a world? If you've never used this muscle before, you become very afraid. Paano na ngayon? I don't know. It's so scary. It's so overwhelmingly scary, diba? And I think often yung anger about, dapat kasi itong mga platforms na to should be telling us what's real, what's not. They should be labeling AI ba to or hindi, is an extension of those habits, of that reliance on something outside of us to tell us what's real and what's not, like our parents did, like our pastor did, like our teachers did. We're so used to people spoon-feeding us information. Now we want these platforms to do that. But for me, I think there's one of the things that excites me. I mean, there are good things and there are bad things about generative AI. But one of the things that excites me about it is if you can make any video that you want to make, you can imagine something and you can make it. You can make it and you can make it and you can make it and you can make it. And I can make it. It used to be a very, very privileged few who are allowed to make images, moving images and sounds. Pero, sorry, yung voice go. Pero if everyone can do it, so many positive things happen from that. First of all, anong tawag doon? undermines yung power of the image, which this project was kind of about it, which was like, why are people giving so much power to the images and they see and sounds they hear when someone can do this? Iniisip ko, and that's part of what this project was about. So I'm all for undermining the power of the image. So I love it when everyone can make any image they can imagine. On the other, and also a second thing is, now you're forced to think, to use that muscle in your brain. You're forced to really grapple with what's real and what's not. And I think that's a very healthy thing. Now, it's long overdue. We need to start doing that. I can't wait to live in a society where people are really scrutinizing what they see. And I think generative AI accelerates that shift, that paradigm shift in society. I think so. If we can do that in ways that aren't harmful, in ways that are good for the environment, then I'm all for it. Thanks. Sorry, yeah, water, please.
Yeah, please. Yes, there's
another
Alex
water.
is going to get some water. But please,
yeah.
Ay, ayan pala. Ubos na.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Pero somewhat, no, in answer to the question, the new film is actually another way of making that same film. Yeah, please,
Exactly.
please go ahead. Yeah.
Hello. My question is more personal. When I was watching yung thesis film, I was like, wow, this is so American. So I'm Filipino-American too. And I wanted to ask you, of course, receiving your education in film in Rochester, and it being used as a ploy or like a tactic by the Marcos Duterte kind of, machinery. How did it feel like for you as someone who is, Filipino-American, and of course, like your identity is, you're kind of in that, I think we feel the same, and we're kind of like in two stages. So how does it feel like one of your works in your American education was used as a ploy or machinery for the Marcos Duterte misinformation campaign in the Philippines? Like, what was your personal relationship with, being used as something to trick people in your home country?
Okay, yeah. How do I feel when the Marcoses use this video? Okay, I'm not Filipino-American, by the way. I'm not. I went to the U.S. for school, right?
We're like opposite. I went back home here too.
Yeah. I mean, it was made very known to me that I was an American when I was there because I got, detained by ICE several times, and I was, So I was not at all an American. So that part, so there's that part. The second part is how do I feel about, Marcos is using this. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how it relates to having happened to go to school in the U.S. I don't know if that has any relationship with them using this. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure. I have to think about that still. But yeah. Thank you so much for your question.
But
yeah.
can I ask a follow-up question
Sige.
to that? And bago tayo mag-segue to the next speaker. So siguro, because I know you have a background in philosophy, you also do activist work. So in the newer film, you're talking about a priori, a posteriori. So there's an element about critical thinking that's analytical, but also you made the thesis years before, and then you talk about Trump and Duterte and all that, in which the critical part is political. So have you thought about this relationship in one which is highly analytical, which teaches us, para maging critical, kailangan na-analyze mo lahat, right? And the other which is, dapat pag critical ka, you understand all things politically, which is sort of like, they clash somewhat, right? And you sort of balance it in the new work.
Yeah.
But where do you stand now when you think of critical thinking as a political act versus critical thinking as, the Ascherian stairwell cannot possibly happen?
Wait, can you repeat? It's a very interesting question, so I want to make sure I understand it. Yung conflict na you were saying at the beginning?
The clash is, diba? So we are critical by always thinking, sa una pa lang, these are all politicized stuff. So I have to be aware that they're tricking me. And of course, one result of that is conspiratorial thinking or taking sides immediately because they're left or right or whatever, or I'm for this group, but this group is That kind of political thinking. But actually that matters too, right? And the other one, which is sort of detached and disinterested and analytical, and I'm not going to take sides, I'm just going to think of this in some... Yeah.
So how do I reconcile
yeah,
those
because you do it in
different,
the film, both of them, but...
Yeah, interesting. Kasi I think what our responsibilities are as thinking people is to be vulnerable, consistently vulnerable to new information. I worry a little bit when I feel like I'm cementing certain beliefs, no matter, even the deepest beliefs that we have. I feel like these are things, such an important part of being a critical thinker, just someone who's a thinking person, someone who's learning or trying to veer towards the truth and gathering as much getting closer and closer to the truth as they can. I think so much of what's important is just being vulnerable to reality. So one of the things, this actually came from one of my philosophy teachers who made this distinction between reasoning and rationalizing, and I heard this over a decade ago, and I still think about it every day. Itong difference between reasoning and rationalization. And this is the difference. This is what it looks like. Reasoning is I'm beginning from a place where I don't know what's true. I don't know what's real. And I go around and I look for the best evidence and the best arguments and piece those together. And that leads me closer and closer and closer to what's true. Yun yung reasoning. And ideally, that's how we navigate the world, through reasoning. Ang rationalizing, on the other hand, nagsisimula ako, I'm starting from the place that I want to be true. I'm starting from the place na alam ko na yung sagot. Ito yung totoo. Now I look around for the evidence and the arguments that just simply reaffirms and strengthens the thing I already preordained from the beginning. Yun yung rationalizing. And if you rationalize, if you're starting with some core principles and you look around for everything in the world to just, solidify the thing you already believe, what chance do you have of drifting towards the truth? You're cemented na in your beliefs. And if you're intelligent, kung matalino kang tao, you'll come up with very good arguments to defend this thing that you've believed since you were 8 years old. You'll be able to defend it. You can defend any argument you want. You can defend any position you want if you're intelligent enough. Pero does that reflect real intellectual curiosity, real honest, vulnerable pursuit of truth, of knowledge? So does that relate? That's kind of how I see it. That's how I see it. So I still think about that every day because it's a daily thing. I ask myself if I'm siguro debating with someone or researching, am I reasoning right now? Am I rationalizing right now? Yeah. So yeah. Great question though. Thank you for yeah. Okay, so I think we have to switch
but
up.
You can stick around if you want to join the next
Yes,
conversation.
yes.
Thank you so much, Michael.
Okay.
Palakpakan naman natin.
Thank you.
Michael. I think also very important, apart from the really great work that you showed us, you raised very important questions, which we wish to pursue in the next talk. And I have the privilege to again introduce the next speaker, who is no stranger to most of us. So si Professor Adjani Arumpac is a well-loved teacher at the UP Film Institute and an award-winning documentarist whose work often turns to memory, displacement, and the quiet forms of resistance that shape our histories. Across both her films and her scholarship, she brings a keen sense of how images are made, preserved, and mobilized. This afternoon, she will share a presentation entitled From Archives to Algorithms, the UPFI and the Future of Film and Media. So the title I must say refers in part to the invitation that I gave her about the CMC at 60th anniversary, no? So tungkol sa UPFI yung papel, no? A synthesis of 3 major projects, or 4 now, no? Jaja, no? 4 major projects that trace the UPFI's beginnings, its role in alternative and grassroots cinema, and its evolving place in a digital environment where images circulate with unprecedented speed. So, maganda dahil kung kayo ay galing UPFI, sabay-sabay nating ilolocate yung mga sarili natin sa kasaysayan na ipipresenta ni Prof. Adjani. So her presentation takes us from the earliest film archives of the Marcos years to the long-running community of Gawad Alternatibo, CCP, and then forward into new visual methodologies for media literacy in a networked age. So, habang sineset up, palakpakan natin si Prof. Adjani.
Salamat. Napanood ko itong trabaho ni Michael sometime last year. And I've been thinking kung paano siya ipapalabas sa docu-class. Alam niyo naman yung docu-class natin, nagbago ako ng approach, no? So, hindi ko masama. But then, Patrick asked me to talk, and then I said, bagay, magkasama. Almost same kami ng thesis, MA thesis, which is what I'm also going to present to you guys. So, BA students meet MA students. Ito yung mga thesis namin. I just also wanted to share that may ibang mga trabaho, katulad nung kay Michael, also interrogating yung disinformation. Napanood nyo ba o narinig nyo ba yung away nila Baron Geisler at Kiko Matos? So that was a social experiment that became bigger than what the director envisioned. It became real, and the director was not able to control it. But I guess that's what disinformation is. I-share ko lang din, nakatulad kay Michael, may trabaho rin ako na naging viral dahil ginamit mga Marcos. Di ko na-realize until later on. At yung viral story na yun ay yung Italiano Gold. Kaya talagang pumili kayo ng mga projects ninyo, guys. Dahil yung project na yun, dahil wala akong pera. I was a single mom, and a friend asked me to be a producer. So, as producer, ang ginawa namin, umiikot kami sa iba't ibang mga city hall looking for the Italiano documents. So, we really worked on it materially. Dahil ang producer, ang nag-fund nung documentary, actually, ang title ng documentary talaga kung saan nanggaling yung disinformation na yan, Mohon ang title. And it was produced by Egg Yolk. Ang kasama ko na i-implicate ko na rin dahil kasalanan niya ay si Onin Tagaro. Siya nag-request sa akin. Tapos, nung in-upload niya yung trabaho na yon na Mohon, inalis niya ang pangalan niya. But nandoon ang pangalan ko, walang hiya siya. So that's just something na parang, just to break, no? And also to say that it's such a phenomenon, disinformation and how it's being used by the state, by these fascists. Yung mga kwento na madaling umangkla yung mga tao na maniwala, no, sa mga myths. And Michael was saying earlier na we need to exercise that muscle, that critical muscle, which is how you concluded your film, no, about the stairwell. And so, basically, yun din yung aking sasabihin ngayon. Except that I'll be walking you through different projects to substantiate, no, at also to share. As film students, I think it will be interesting for you to know about little bits of information here and there about the UP Film Institute and about film in general in history. So, nung ni-request na ako ni Patrick to give him a title. Ito yung binigay ko. The From Archives to Algorithms, UPFI, and the Future of Film and Media. And I'm sorry, it's so grand. It's so grand. We cannot really talk about the future, right? So think of this as an artist's reflection, field report from an evolving research journey. So I'll present again my MA thesis. Ito yung aking MA thesis. It was a documentary installation, Anatomy of Compassion. For my MA sa Goldsmiths University of London, noong 2019 naman ito. So my course was MA in Digital Media and Cultural Studies, and I got the Shivning Scholarship for it. That's why I was able to study there. Otherwise, I don't have the capacity to study there. Bakit Digital Media and Cultural Studies? Because I thought I was working with digital media, making films. But I was so dead wrong. Because when I went there, ang tinuturo sa amin, coding, etc. Things that I know nothing about. So umikot ang puwet ko. And I learned to see the technology, the philosophy behind the technology. So my documentary installation thesis featured Rafi Lerma's Pieta. So ito yung photograph na sinasabi nila that called worldwide attention to the drug war in the Philippines. It was taken on July 23, 2016, and it went viral. Ngayon, in 2017, a US-based Filipino historian, si Vicente Rafael, gave a talk about Rafi Lerma and his group, the Nightcrawlers. So ito yung grupo ng mga photographers who were taking photos of the drug war. He critiqued the group, and then he received backlash. So yung makikita nyo dito, screenshot ng kanyang Facebook post, trying to explain his side, defending himself against the backlash. So I was mad. I was mad because my sister was part of the Nightcrawlers, and you know her work, Aswang, the documentary. And before going to London, I've kept on seeing Rafi, the photographer nung Pieta, Rafi Lerma, in different places. Nagsama kami sa SONA, kita rin tayo dun, Mike, di ba? Sa SONA, nakita kami sa retirement ceremony ni Ombudsman Morales, kung saan gumawa ko ng docu. And then in London, I also saw Rafi. And for the first time, I saw him present, talk about the drug war photos. And Rafi, who I know, kasama ko pa sa Kule, from way back si Rafi. So Rafi was this cool guy, not emotional at all. But when I saw him in London presenting, he was crying. And I saw just how much the drug war documentation changed him. And so, mas nagalit ako. Mas nagalit ako dun sa interpretation ni Rafael. And then fast forward to 2020, tahimik lang ako. Tahimik lang naman ako. I mean, I couldn't really critique Rafael because I waited for his paper to get published. And so I can read his critique comprehensively. And it was published in 2020. So despite his defense, I realized what I understood then in 2017 remains the same. What was his premise for the critique? So Rafael talks about how the drug war's images spread widely in liberal media. And he asks a key question. Why didn't all these photographs reduce Duterte's popularity? So in effect, he placed an unfair expectation on the photographs and on the photojournalists who took them. These images were treated as if they alone could stop authoritarian populism. But the journalists were simply doing their job, documenting events and making them visible. The idea that their images could single-handedly counter the public sentiment was an impossible and ultimately misplaced burden. So back in 2017, balik tayo ulit dun sa Goldsmiths, I was very disappointed. Tanong ko, how could a scholar be so pedantic? It was a failure of interpretation and imagination. At the same time that I was following the controversy back then, I was thinking of what to do for my creative thesis. Kasi 1 year lang yung MA. So I proposed that instead of interpreting the photograph, perhaps we can watch the photograph. So I proposed watching the photograph, the viral photo that was Pieta. And so Pieta was treated not as a static picture, but as a literally moving image online. So documentary filmmaker ako, and so I found ways of connecting my thesis pa rin to my practice. So in a sense, it was a documentation of a moving image. According to Ariel Azoulay, watching the photograph is a transformative act of caring for its sense. So watching the photograph was the method I used in my research, and the result was a database of the photos reshares online. I made my own archive of the Pieta's movement online by documenting the virality metadata, which is what you're seeing here, or the metadata of each reshare of the same photo. And basically, ito yung result niya. Briefly, the results revealed that from 2016 to 2019, Pieta appeared and reappeared online. At first, the image circulated through mainstream media, but once Rafi decided to stand with those demanding state accountability, the Pieta's momentum shifted and the movement around it grew organically. The Pieta was shared every time Rafi participated in talks against the drug war. It was used in other campaigns as well and spread organically because the people actively kept it alive. Its virality grew out of the energy of advocates and the wider public who cared about the issue. So from the initial research, of course I couldn't stop here, guys. But it's a creative research, right? So how do you visualize? How can I visualize itong graph nito? So from the initial research, I created the documentary installation, which had two parts. The first was about movement, now that you can visually see here, yung 3 years, how the photograph spread online, which I mapped by tracing its metadata, where and when it was uploaded, shared, and reposted. The second was about form. So how that same image could be rebuilt through a 3D modeling software. Itong software na to ay open software. It's called Regard 3D. And so I asked Rafi for the original photos that he took of the crime scene. And he gave me 12 photos. So I fed these 12 photos to the Regard 3D software. This is a photogrammetry software. Supposedly, pag gumagawa ka ng 3D, no? So pag perfect yung pagkakagawa mo, pag na-picturean mo yung isang item all around, then you'll have a perfect item. But here, we have a crime scene. And so what you're seeing now, here, are the image pairs that were identified by the software. So it's making a very big, and you can see here, it's mapping similarity. So those are called blockers lines. So by feeding Lerma's 12 original photographs of the crime scene into the program, I asked it to reconstruct the scene. So after the image pairing, it began to create the volume by comparing or mapping all of these pairings together. And you can see here, sa side na yon, nakikita mo yung metadata, the processing of the Regard software. And at the end, it gave me this. So this was the 3D reconstruction of the Pieta. Of course, you can see how imperfect the technology is. I'm only able to mostly align letters. And so from that, what came out was not a full image, but a constellation of points and angles, signages, street lights, bit of fabric. It showed the limitations of the 3D technology. What you see here is one image pair identified by the 3D app. I manually processed these photos in Photoshop to show only what the 3D app was able to map. Then comes the more abstract part. I placed the two data sets side by side. This is the metadata, virality, and then the metadata of the 3D reconstruction. I thought, if like in 3D reconstruction, volume can be created by processing a series of photos, then maybe we can also create volume from a series of online reiteration of one viral image. So napaka-abstract nung aking premise, no? I wanted to give a face to the invisible digital labor of the people who were campaigning against the drug war by resharing Pieta. I wanted to document the solidarity, the fleeting and often fragile expressions of resistance. So of course, this was only speculative, mostly theoretical or imaginative, and hence, only this video. This is a screenshot of a video scrolling. At kasama siya doon sa installation. So in lieu of an unmappable solidarity, I invited the audience to do the first step in 3D reconstruction of the photo, yung pinakita ko kanina, which is the homography, tracing lines between two photos to map its similarities. So what the 3D app couldn't map was mostly human bodies. And so in the installation, you will see here the scrolling video and then the image there. I also put two here. And then I invited the audience to weave. The audience, on the other hand, automatically went for the human. Parang automatic siya, no? Pag may dumadaan, I told them, so these are acrylic lines, and then there's skin on the other side, here and here. So it's up to them what they want to pair, the similarity. So they started weaving the human back into the equation. So this was my thesis then. The technology's incompleteness is also our opening, where the machine stops, human imagination and intervention begins. It's very simple, if you think about it, but it went through a lot. No? And I got distinction, which was good. Now, looking back, I now see that installation as the starting point of what we in UP Film Institute, and perhaps also no, kung paano ginawa ni Mike yung kanyang trabaho, what we call arts-based research, a methodology that treats creative practice as inquiry. This approach is now central to UPFI's educational philosophy. So I guess this is a soft launch for you guys. That the work of the artist is also the work of thinking, creation, and research. These are not separate. These are not separate acts, but continuous reflective and reflexive processes. So needless to say, 1 year of study was not enough for me to fully digest the learnings and expound on my thesis. So just like Mike, the project continued, the research continued after. So from that installation came a series of related initiatives that I have been pursuing for the past 6 years. And I'm so sorry to dump this all on you today, but I'll promise to keep it short. So these include my archival projects, my essay Watching the Photograph, an expanded version of the written component of my installation, and my research on the CCP's Gawad Alternatibo history. So in this talk, I will try my best to make sense of putting together all of these projects by putting forward a thesis. And my thesis is, in the Philippine context, cultural resistance has always emerged from within systems of control. Our task now, as artists, scholars, citizens, is to reclaim the tradition of creative subversion. And this is my answer to Mike's challenge sa dulo, how to use the critical muscle. So at the time I did my thesis, as you can see, no, I knew little about archiving, or rather I was already thinking archivally but in speculative digital sense. I was organizing information through metadata templates, but hindi talaga ako nakaka-handle pa ng archive. So pagbalik ko, nag-apply ako sa full-time faculty, and then, ginawa nila kaagad akong coordinator. So, bilang coordinator, ang una kong ginawa actually, at nasa pandemic, gitna na itong pandemic, was to meet the archivist, si Mac Junio. I really wanted to see how our archives were. This connects to, of course, my personal mga obsessions. No? And so, let me talk about the UPFI archives. So, sino nakapunta natin sa film archives? Tingnan mo, konti pa lang kayo. The UPFI Film Archives is one of the oldest film archives in Southeast Asia. And we just learned that sa aming sa project na to. So, it began in 1976 as the heart of the UP Film Center, the UPFI Film Archives. And it was envisioned by Virginia Moreno, who was a professor sa UP and founder of Humanities Department. She was also a poet and UNESCO ambassador. So back then, UP Film Center is not what we see there. It was in Palma Hall. And the film archives were film cans tucked into cabinets and some were under classroom tables. Then it grew into a hub for film literacy, preservation, and public access. Noong 1984, it found a home in the UP Film Center. Na alam niyo na. So yan is a photo ng UP Film Center when it was being built. So the UPFI, as I said, is one of the oldest film archives in Southeast Asia. And its journey mirrors that of the Institute itself. So ano nga ba pinagmulan ng Film Institute? Noong 1983, Film Center became part of the College of Mass Communication. So it was an independent entity, the UP Film Center. But in 1983, nagkaroon ng university policies that all independent entities inside the university should be appended and put under the different academic programs. And so, UP Film Center was merged with College of Mass Communication. And then in 2003, it was merged with the Department of Film and Audiovisual Communication under CMC. And that merging became the UP Film Institute. So the merger was not without drama because Virginia Moreno didn't want to merge the UP Film Center with the MASCOM. But policies require integration. So there's that thing that you can see in our archives, mga chismis din. Mga away of the giants. So that restructuring, while necessary, shifted priorities away from preservation. Fast forward to the pandemic. So I remember walking to Cine Adarna and then walking to the film archives and then meeting with Mac Junio nga. And Mac Junio is our archivist. Nag-retire na siya. But prior to that, he was an intern of the first archivist, si Anela Mendoza, na umalis noong 1995. After si Anela Mendoza, Mac took over, followed by Vicente Tenefrancia, and then in 2004, after the merging, nawala ng archivist at nilagay nila ang isang CMC professor. So, naturally, without the experts, the archive slowly started to fade away. Without the experts, the archivists handling the archive, our archive started deteriorating. And one more thing na na-realize namin sa project while working on the archives is that there's no official audiovisual archivist plantilla in the university system, only librarians. And so you can only see kung paano audiovisual archives are not at all a priority or not even acknowledged because we don't have a plantilla for archivists. So when Mac returned years later as librarian, he was shocked at how much had been lost and how much work was needed to rebuild the archives. So we began with what we could. So we updated the thesis collection and now it's online. Then came a turning point. We received a grant from UCLA. This allowed us to survey the two oldest collections, the Umatic tapes and the open reels. So we have this, no? And the results revealed that nearly 90% of the pneumatic tapes showed signs of mold, hindi mabuksan, water damage. Some were so contaminated that we couldn't even open the cans. Many had missing or overwritten labels. So identification, metadata, cataloging was really a challenge. And then came a surprise. The majority of those tapes were United Nations materials. Titles like World Chronicle, UN in Action, UN Hour. So these were produced by the UN Department of Public Information from the 70s to the 80s and distributed to broadcasters and universities worldwide, meant to educate the public about peacekeeping, development, and human rights. So their presence in the archives told the story that the UP Film Center was once a regional hub for international audiovisual materials, directly linked to UNESCO and the UN. It made sense because, again, Virginia Moreno was a UNESCO ambassador. Meanwhile, the Open Reels collection came from an entirely different source, the Malacanang Audiovisual Archives. These were acquired in 1988, found abandoned in the palace grounds after martial law. 96% of the material came from that era, press conferences, speeches, meetings, offering an unfiltered look at the media machinery of the Marcos dictatorship. So through this project, our understanding of the archives changed. What we initially thought was a collection centered on alternative, author-driven cinema from the UP Film Center's film literacy programs turned out to be something else entirely. The Pneumatic collection, at least the earliest ones, was dominated not by experimental works, but by development communication and institutional media. So I end this part for now, and we'll come back to this, more about this later. But I also want to share another realization, and that is how fragile institutional memory can be. Just over 40 years have passed, and we have no details about the things that we've learned just by konting kalkal lang. Handling those tapes wasn't just an act of physical preservation. It was reconstructing not only lost media, but also lost history. So when I was working on the UPFI archival project, I was also hired as a technical consultant for another archival project, which was the Philippine Documentary Heritage Archival Collection on the COVID-19 pandemic. Basically, ang archival project nito was a collection of artworks produced during the pandemic. I will not share the whole project. I'm sharing this only as a context. So at the onset, dun sa project na yon, may paradox. Gumawa siya ng listahan ng database of the pandemic artworks by Googling or using online search engines. Pero sa dulo, ang gusto niya, ang pinapayagan niya lang tanggapin sa kanyang archive are the original artworks. Meaning, the access to the works were through online, but in the end, the collection only allowed keeping the original artwork and not the copy that was found online. And I thought this was a problem on so many levels. Because as a general rule, the domains of library, so I'm already talking about what I learned about archives, after the very speculative start ng aking thesis. And so, as a general rule, the domains of library and archival knowledge emphasize yung authenticity of the original digital object through its provenance. So the keyword is provenance. So I learned this from the archivist, non-negotiable ang provenance. It's tied to the intrinsic value of the object, and it has long been used by archivists to describe historical materials that should be retained in their original form. Why? It's to ensure the quality of institutional memory. Pero, yun yung nakitang problematic dun sa PHDH collection, which brought me back to my thesis. My question was, then what makes a viral image authentic? What makes what can make copies authentic? When a lot of images, for example, online now, exist as copies, such as Pietà and its iterations, where can we find authenticity in the virality of Pietà? And so that question, later on, yung sa PhD project, kasama ko sila Adrian, Rose Roque, so they went to the very rigid archival things, no? But I went on to my own research. And I found a study by archival theorist Luciana Duranti. At sabi niya, authenticity is only the assurance that the record has not been altered after its creation. But authenticity still doesn't guarantee the truth. Parang sa documentary, right? What guarantees truth? So building on her work, another archival scholar said, authenticity is never absolute. It's an informed opinion. And her study was about forgeries. At ang kanyang conclusion is, even forgeries can gain authenticity once acknowledged by the archive that contains them. So if, for example, may forgery at nalaman na may forgery dun sa archive na yon, if that archive acknowledges that it is a forgery but still keeps it, then it regains its authenticity. So napaka expansive ng definition na ito. And it shifted authenticity as a property to authenticity as a relation. And this resonates with the digital era where copies abound. And it also helped me refine my method of watching the photograph by emphasizing context of each reshare of the viral photo. The authenticity of Pietà is the narrative of its movement, where each copy or reshare tells its own story. More importantly, all these reshares tell a bigger narrative about the trustworthy institution that lends its authenticity to Pietà. So ang naging question na, what archive gives the viral Pietà its authenticity? So finally, after 6 years of thinking about it, I concluded in the essay that will be published this December that Pietà as a viral photograph draws its authenticity from the Revolutionary Archive. It's the Filipino people's history of lived struggles. Its authenticity is established by the people that weaponized the photo to fight the drug war, as they saw, as we saw, finally, what the drug war was. Not a war on drugs, but a war on the poor. It's a class war. Admittedly, this conclusion pushed me beyond the rigid parameters of archival theory, but I was never an archivist anyway. My engagement with library studies is more conceptual. And that's the beauty of it, the multidisciplinary perspective. But this interdisciplinary method materialized what was missing in Rafael's critique. The issue with Vicente Rafael's reading of Pietà is not misinterpretation, but omission. He overlooks the photograph's radical potential, its embeddedness in and contribution to the broader people's struggle. So this led me to the larger issue surrounding Pietà's online circulation, which was the overwhelming presence of disinformation. Within neoliberal systems, disinformation works by discrediting people's struggles, an erasure that echoes the anti-communist propaganda pushed by imperialist West during the Cold War. Ironically, many of the same Western knowledge institutions that shape these narratives still provide the frameworks that we use today to interpret social and political phenomena, often softening or obscuring the violence produced by neoliberal capitalism. And case in point was Rafael's interpretation of Pietà. The struggle for truth is not new, and we go back to the UPFI film archives. Our archives remind us that even its earliest UN-sourced holdings were shaped by Cold War battles over who had the authority to define truth and freedom of information. So yung sinasabi nilang free flow of information, it was never neutral. It's a geopolitical strategy to assert control over global media infrastructures. And Yung problema, yung nakikita natin dun sa UPFI Film Archives, it continues until now. The power to shape the systems through which knowledge is produced and circulated. So only now, algorithmic platforms na rather than broadcast empires, the rhetoric of freedom persists, but under digital capitalism. So confronting this information requires recognizing that its greatest danger is not fake news. Never the fake news. It's the root. It's the erasure of the histories and struggles that these systems are designed to render invisible. And how I was able to analyze this was through what I call critical information literacy. And this is the very material thing that I'm trying to forward now. Imbes na sinasabi natin, lagi nilang sinasabi, fact-checking, right? Digital literacy. But those are not enough. Because how do you fact-check something? You just compare, so tama lang. When what is wrong is epistemic, right? It's knowledge that has history, that's produced by history, at hindi neutral yun. So fact-checking is never enough. And so we introduce critical information literacy. And basically, it's a way of cutting through the deluge of data by practicing deliberate, historically grounded curation. And I developed this from archival, documentary, digital media philosophies. It is the ability to read across systems of power and to recognize where agency can emerge precisely in moments when we appear most powerless. So that's the summary. And okay pa kayo? Okay pa? Kasi ito na. Oh, may dalawa pang sections next. So, to illustrate critical information literacy, so nakita niyo no, kung paano binasa yung thesis ko through CIL. And then let's use CIL in the Gawad Alternatibo. So, this is Gawad Alternatibo, and we launched it recently sa Cinemalaya. Walang history, walang written history ang Gawad Alternatibo, even if it's already 35 years old. One of the longest film award platforms in Southeast Asia, if not the longest na talaga, 35 years. And May from CCP requested me to make a book about the Gawad Alternatibo. And so this is the product. So I took on the task of writing its history. So ang aking mga references ay syempre alternative cinema ni Sir Nick, mga blog posts at iba pang mga nakita ko here and there, interviews with the people who were organizers and filmmakers. So at the same time, I was also working on So baliw na baliw ako ng time na to. At buntis ako. Parang ko lang, no? Yan. So I was dead tired. But even I was so dead tired, I think it was a lucky coincidence. Nagsabay-sabay itong mga projects na to. Because I saw genealogy emerge. And reading the archive, which itself requires capital, labor, infrastructure, forces us to see the system first. So CIL in turn shows us how resistance is embedded within that system. So paulit-ulit ako sa thesis na to. And this insight changed how I now understand alternative cinema. So in popular Philippine film history that is forwarded by Sir Nick de Ocampo, alternative cinema is oppositional outside the mainstream. Not just Sir Nick de Ocampo, no? So this binary way of thinking has effectively removed the conditions of emergence of the alternative cinema. I, for one, have always wondered where the term alternative actually came from. And so, itong history ng Gawad Alternatibo is basically, hinahanap ko yung term na alternatibo sa history ng Philippine cinema. So in the next slides, I will share my analysis of the origins of the term alternative and argue that although the category has been popularly associated with independent filmmaking, its earliest official use was bureaucratic and state-driven. The origin complicates our understanding of what alternative means. So let's rewind back to the 1980s. So ito makikita nyo, this is the proposal that built the BA film. Ito yon. And if you read, in 1984, IMC, Institute of Mass Communication pa ang tawag sa CMC, proposed a new academic program, AB Communication Film, ang tawag pa, and Audiovisual Communication. So the proposal aligned itself with state-led efforts to professionalize the local film industry through the 50 million pesos trust fund for local film productions, the Manila Film Center, and the newly formed Experimental Cinema of the Philippines. The Marcos government, desperate to reinvent its image after lifting martial law, began to use film as proof of its openness. So this was the last years of the Marcos and the fading power of the Marcos. And to quell unrest, he lifted martial law. In other words, the UP Film Institute, at least yung pinakasasimula, no, the country's first academic film program, emerged from within the same ecosystem that sought to rehabilitate the regime's public image through the language of art, education, and development. So film education required technology, equipment, and capital, resources that only a state-led cultural apparatus could master at the moment. Meanwhile, ECP, or the Experimental Cinema Philippines, created in 1982, became the centerpiece of this strategy by the Marcos government. On the surface, it promised artistic freedom, grants for young filmmakers, film festivals, and even space for experimental cinema. But beneath that promise was something else. The regime had learned that allowing limited dissent could serve as a sign of democracy itself. And this is what we might call an institutionalized dissent. So what's of particular interest for me and for you here now, I was learning about the ECP's Alternative Cinema Department, which planned and managed film literacy programs, among others. So artists were encouraged to critique, but within state-defined limits. The result was a paradox. So ECP produced our classics like Oro Plata Mata, Himala, and it also produced softcore films like Scorpionites. That became art classics also. So the state commodified transgression. And the alternative cinema department staff would later join the concerned artists of the Philippines and participate in protests against censorship. So in sum, a closer look at this history reveals that the term alternative was first officially appended to cinema in the Philippines, not by independent filmmakers, as I said, but by the state institution, ECP's Alternative Cinema Department. And so I had to double check this. Patrick, tama ba? Tama ba, no? Parang I had to double check because, of course, alternative cinema is the rallying call of Cernic, no? But I double checked, so around the same time, roughly during the same period, Cernic de Ocampo was organizing the Manila Short Film Festival dito sa UP Film Center. So this was 1981 to 1984. And I looked, these are the manifestos that Cernic wrote. So these manifestos that he drafted for the Manila Short Film Festival. The term alternative cinema is notably absent. What existed then was a campaign for the recognition of short films. Not yet a consolidated movement under the label alternative. Thus, before alternative cinema became the rallying term De Ocampo popularized, again, babalik tayo dito pa rin, no, sa ECP's Alternative Cinema Department. So when the dictatorship fell in 1986, two former ECP Alternative Cinema Department staff, Hami Soto and Ed Cabagnot, revived ECP's Short Film Festival under new political conditions. So ito yung catalog ng ECP Short Film Festival. 3 editions lang. And they renamed, Hami Soto and Ed Cabagnot renamed ECP Short Film Festival into Gawad CCP para sa alternatibong pelikula at video, now called Gawad Alternatibo. So this renaming did more than rebrand a festival. It relocated the term alternative from a Marcos-era bureaucracy into the CCP, which was itself undergoing reorientation after martial law. Thus, the term alternative cinema acquired a continuity across ruptures, carrying traces of its institutional origin, even as it was repurposed by a democratizing cultural sector. So the next major articulation of alternative cinema na nahanap ko appears in 1986 when UP Film Institute Professor Emeritus Doc Nick Chongson used the term in a presentation on the post-Marcos film industry. He argued that the alternative cinema, especially video filmmaking, should be encouraged. If one recalls that it was the documentary movies of Asia Visions that recorded and made public the abuses of the dictatorship which the crony media glossed over, it becomes clear that the tradition of making films should be kept alive. So si Doc Nick, critic, academic activist, he was appointed CCP Vice President and Artistic Director after martial law, as part of the institution's democratizing shift after the dictatorship. So under this new leadership, the CCP, once the emblem of elite art, was reclaimed by progressive artists who drafted a blueprint for a more participatory cultural policy. So this reorientation contributed to the eventual, for example, formation of NCCA, yung mga nakikita natin ngayong, yung ating mga cultural institutions. They are reformed state institutions. So always remember that the blueprint of our cultural institutions are actually activist in nature. But, and here's the thing, let's talk more. So what emerges is a cyclical dynamic. So the state mobilizes culture to legitimize power, yung institutionalized dissent, no? Then artists resist and reclaim that same cultural space, and eventually their struggles are folded back into the governance structures. So critical informational literacy sharpens this insight. Reading the archive critically acknowledges that in the Philippine context, the alternative has never been entirely oppositional, nor entirely co-opted. It has always been a practice of creative insurgency from within, a negotiation between complicity and critique. And state-funded schools like UPFI became laboratories for this ongoing negotiation. Hindi lang schools, no, pati NGOs. Then we have filmmakers like Lino Broca. So the conditions of possibility that gave rise to what we now call alternative cinema were therefore not simply the rejection of the commercial sector. It emerged from the struggle against the very institutions that supported and recognized it. And this energy comprises the Gawad Alternatibo film archive with its works by students, NGOs, and independent filmmakers. And this entanglement across state, activist, academic, commercial spheres produced a collective awakening at a critical historical moment. It was this convergence and the tensions within it that made alternative cinema potent and transformative. So, to view the wider landscape of arts and culture through this lens is to acknowledge how insidious co-optation can be. Struggle, once institutionalized, risks losing its oppositional edge. The challenge for us as inheritors of these institutions is to sustain the friction, to keep alive the energies of dissent that once transformed them. So from a critical information literacy perspective, Reading the archive critically is not a rejection of its histories, but a way of engaging with them, questioning how knowledge and authority are produced. So it's a form of cultural reckoning, a confrontation of the regimes of seeing that we have inherited. In this light, the spirit of alternatives resides not in form, but in practice. It is the same critical and generative energy that must continue, no, in our classrooms, in what we do as scholar ng bayan. So if you think about it, based on the trajectory of my arts-based research, dapat ang title is from algorithms to archives. No? But all the same, both are information systems from which my thesis draws its conclusion. So again, that's my thesis na sinabi ko kanina. Understanding critical information literacy acknowledges that we are always operating within systems, and we are complicit in their structures. Yet, we are capable of reflecting on and resisting their constraints, which leads me back to Michael's thesis about his film, using that critical muscle. The systems of control around us are huge, powerful, and comfortable. So if we don't move, sabi nga nila, we don't notice our chains. Nagbabago ang teknolohiya, pero ang ating mga material na kondisyon ay same pa rin. So we need ways to analyze these changes, not merely to keep pace, but to understand na continuity ang lahat ng ito. No? So let me round up my discussion into 2 words. So at its core, critical information literacy is an intertwining of 2 affective forces, care at focus. Yung care, nakuha ko sa technology philosopher na medyo sikat ngayon, rockstar, si Yu Kui. Meron siyang sinulat, Archivist Manifesto. Sabi niya, recovery of what he calls the practice of care, a deliberate re-engagement with the organization of our own data. He argues that we can no longer be passive users whose clicks and attentions are harvested by corporate platforms. Care is relearning how to curate, classify, and store, to become archivists of our own digital lives. So care is information labor, and it must become essential labor. Second is focus. Ngayon, focus is already a skill. Hindi ba? Focus is a skill, attention economy. So, in my definition, focus is the ability to see movements within these information systems that include archives, library systems, media infrastructures, platforms that shape visibility, and basically our mediatized lives. So focus makes us ask, how do people learn to read systems of power? How do we teach people to read these systems of power? How do we teach interpretation? And because literacy always implies both reading and writing, CIL moves towards praxis. It asks, how do we create counter-archives? How do we build systems or narratives that resist erasure? How do we teach ourselves to interpret and intervene? So while other critical theories may give us a lens for reading culture or ideology, CIL gives us a framework for reading the information infrastructures themselves, and crucially for teaching ourselves how to intervene. And to this challenge, I have a few recommendations. Care equals strengthen the infrastructures of memory. Again, our archives are in a dire condition. We must develop an integrated framework for audiovisual archiving, digital preservation, and public access. The university must support this through funding by creating a plantilla position for a trained AV archivist and data curators, multimedia historians. All of this wala pa sa discourse ng universidad. No? Second, focus equals to countering algorithmic thinking through CIL as essential competency. Meron tayong mga nakikita ngayon na mga about AI na mga talks. For example, bago lang sa ICW, AI and Creative Writing. So pinanood ko, buti na lang naka-stream online. And mostly, it rationalizes the use of AI. Na huwag matakot sa AI, ganon, that it can be helpful if one is just open to it. But I think the more productive way of talking about AI is really how it works, ano yung logic ng AI. And it's the algorithmic thinking. So what is an algorithmic thinking? So AI, algorithmic thinking, basically it reduces complex cultural meaning to what can be measured and predicted. So it reduces everything to data. No? And the more data, the better informed it is, quote unquote. So it shapes both production and visibility of creative works. And unfortunately, our very academic institutions and film institutions, such as festivals and online platforms, are adapting this kind of thinking through yung ginawa ko, accreditation, para maging nakapasok sa box, no? Yung UPFI, dapat quality assurance. So merong ganitong optimizations na ginagawa. This is algorithmic thinking. Of course, yung mga sa film festivals, no? Lahat ng dinadaanan, it's to optimize the film. So that's algorithmic thinking. Think about it. Why? Needs to sell. So to counter algorithmic thinking is to disrupt this platform marketization logic. It's in a time when Philippines produces an unprecedented volume of works, independent, mostly independent. Tama ba ako? Pero ang dami-dami, di ba? Platform governance is now film governance. And here, education and curation must actively intervene in the making of cultural memory, not merely to critique or sell it. So creation and curation now form a single ecosystem where experimentation and intentional circulation must reinforce one another. In this landscape, CIL becomes essential in many ways, equipping filmmakers, curators, programmers, and teachers to intervene in visibility and sustain the vitality of Philippine independent and alternative cinema and media. So I was thinking about it. Hindi ko siya sinama dun sa essay ko, no? Pero I'm opening it to you guys because I'm sure you have more ideas about this and really how we can move forward. Kasi we all know, di ba? There's a big gap between what you're studying and what you're experiencing. No? And how do we close this gap a little? Right? At least in the material sense. So a material way for UPFI can be really is a collaboration with other colleges. Library science, computer sciences, engineering, and arts colleges para magkaroon ng interdisciplinary studios and labs that embed these practices into the curriculum. Meron tayo dito, for example, critical production lab. Develop works that interrogate the systems, contexts, and histories shaping media production. Experimenting with narrative structure, basically Michael's work. Merging creative experimentation with analytical reflection, arts-based research. We are already doing this, but we are not, hindi siya intentional pa. But if we make it intentional, then we produce more films that actually interrogate. And that are best nasa setup ng screening, hindi siya festival screening setup, but really classroom setup. Wouldn't that be wonderful? Right? It's not just fanfare, but really learning. So the labs as creation and feedback mechanisms, much like what Michael has been doing for a year with 40 plus screenings already. Then we can have form experimentation labs, black box, and platform audit films. These are more like very audacious ideas. Like we can partner with engineering and computer engineering and the sciences. Targets engagement through experimental forms that interrogate algorithmic systems. For example, in platform audit films, students investigate how streaming platforms recommend or categorize films, making visible the political economy of visibility. Ang black box studios naman, reverse engineer, simulate, or creatively reinterpret algorithmic processes to reveal hidden logics shaping circulation. So these labs use experimentation, not only for aesthetic innovation, which is usually what you have with experimental films, but to use experimentation itself as a critical tool to understand and intervene in platform-mediated engagement. Then finally, and this is the most, I think this is the most feasible na UPFI pa lang, but can also be done with library science is metadata and curation practices. For example, metadata intervention workshops where filmmaker design tagging systems, descriptions, and digital packaging that resist flattening into generic or historical categories. So, ang daming dapat na gawin actually, no, after ng paggawa ng pelikula for your films to catalog ng maayos. And then we have the film programming labs, which you already know, but curators develop thematic clusters, regional constellations, etc., that foreground relational meaning rather than platform-driven metrics. So together, these kinds of initiatives form an ecosystem, and it's guided by idea of literacy, really teaching everyone to read and write information, where film is treated as an information system itself. So these are just material recommendations, and again, I said I am sure the youth in our audience might have more ideas, but ayun. So maybe later na lang siguro I'll open this question if what do you think should be done pa? How can we start? So I'm kind with this one. Napanood niyo na ba to? The Wind Rises? Napanood ko bago lang. So akala ko napanood ko na lahat ng mga Ghibli films. And this one thing, I had to go back because it's so wonderful. Caproni tells young Jiro na gumagawa ng airplanes, silang dalawa. So beyond skill, beyond craft, we must have the audacity to dream better. And everything else will follow. Because we need to dream better. Lalo na't napaka-traditional pa rin dito sa UP ng lahat. Perhaps after this, then we can start thinking of really moving forward. Yun. So, maraming salamat.
Hello. Yeah. So it's great that you're all here. I don't know how if you realize that this is a very important talk for UPFI. Because actually naguhudyat siya, no? Because we're sort of really revisioning where UPFI is going. And I think this is the first, like the hudyat talaga, no? Because these are really very important issues raised about where we could go from here, no?
Yes, and we still have time to groom them. Hindi pa sila graduating.
Hindi, iniisip ko nga kung tatamaan pa ba sila.
Dapat ba?
Parang isip ko,
second year, third year.
Bakit yung mga future pa? Ba't hindi kami? Mga gano'n. Yeah, so, and we are moving there. But ang sobrang daming thoughts in my head. It's really a kind of paper after my own heart. Where it has more questions sa dulo, no? Yeah, but for now, habang nagpo-process pa din ako, bukas natin yung floor for questions. We can include everyone in the conversation, including Michael's work and thought process. And then it can also go both ways because Prof. Adjani was also saying we wanted to ask you which could be. So let's open the floor for discussion. You have initial thoughts.
What do you think of those initiatives, like the black box studios, the metadata tagging workshop? Does it interest you? or for example, reverse engineering algorithm, etc., you think you'll be comfortable working with computer science students, AI students, library science students? Is that even in your vista?
Actually, we can also ask you, no? For example, when you think of making your films, where do you think of them going? Parang something as basic as that, such as film festivals. Because we had this conversation earlier, which comes from a classroom conversation about students actually imagining their films going to festivals. Is this like how everyone thinks, and therefore how does that square with what Prof. Adjani was saying earlier? Yeah, go.
So I think that it's very important, all of the initiatives that were mentioned prior. And I think I discussed in one of my classes last year, I forgot, but we don't really have like a centralized way to archive everything, like unless it's like mandated by the state, or it's like a bill that's able to regulate everything into one specific system, then it's gonna be really difficult. And I think realistically, as film students, besides volunteering for initiatives, if these are possible, I think being able to work with computer science students, being able to start within our own classes, if we're able to develop something, at least for like short films that we develop for classes, for directing, for thesis, if we're able to build that system for those classes, it can sort of serve as a sort of test run before we, I guess, make it accessible to wider audience for the entire college and stuff like that.
Siguro follow-up question ko dun sa sinasabi mo, how are you imagining testing first before showing? I mean, how would that be operationalized in your mind? I'm interested.
Kasi right now, for class assignments, parang we tend to submit we make the works, and then we submit it to like Google Classroom, Drive, email, and then we sort of tend to forget about it. And then even me, I tend to find a hard time looking for stuff that I submitted during my first year here in UP Film. I'm already having a hard time finding works for like Film 100 that I made before. So I think being able to, if we're not able to organize everything for like one specific class before, at least being able to implement like the one specific system to one class is already going to start. But how specifically, since I'm not a computer science student, I don't know how to build databases.
Yeah, definitely. That's why yung pinaka-center of gravity of what I'm trying to say is sa CL is to naka-focus sa information systems, because we can learn a lot from information systems because we are living through a big information system. So to learn, for example, practices ng archives, library science will teach us a lot about how we organize our stuff and also how to think through the era now. But yeah, that is an essential skill that can be only taught by the archive, and we do not have an archivist. We have librarians. Magkaiba sila actually, no? Magkaiba. As I was made to understand nung ginagawa namin yung project sa UCLA. There. Yeah.
And then quick comment lang din in order to sort of contextualize it in relation to Michael's work, no? So when I was asking you about where do you think your films would go, this is another interesting model, diba? So in terms of exhibition, so the idea is fast, like get there fast or get there big. Whereas Michael's work he's been to 44 screenings where he is present in different parts of the world. And one of those 44 is here. And that's another way of exhibition, which we used to do a lot, which is very meaningful, but I think none of us is thinking about today.
Yeah, but Michael's a very good example of disrupting the logic of the platform logic. Yeah.
Diba? Kasi ang madalas iniisip ay paano to papasok sa ganitong festival, or paano to mananalo, or right, paano to kakalat, whereas here you have 44 screenings in different parts of the world with an actual person in present to talk to you about the work, no? And it's not new. It's like, di ba? It's been around, but we've not had that mindset for some time. Sige, go.
Nagusto ko yung idea ng when you were suggesting what are the new avenues we can push forward with yung a more critical lens of not just filmmaking but also education and programming. And particularly as a student sa FI, parang for the last few years, parang naging common criticism or self-criticism din among students is that, yun nga, I think you mentioned in Sir Campos na we have this now mindset na we will make it if we get inside the festival.
Mm-hmm.
But there are definitely alternative avenues of getting your film out there. And I feel like baka pwedeng itong maging bridge between the student and FI to have more collaborations in film programming, not just as a film programming class, but definitely like within the orgs and within the students, baka there will be more opportunities for us as students and the faculty to hold programs and to hold, parang di na siya festival, pero more of programs and discussion na talaga siya within us as filmmakers and film students and the general audience. Since feel ko it's an opportunity for people to interact with people sa CMC and filmmakers and the wider audience para meron tayong mas critical discussion between our works. And that can be as simple as yung mga works from our classes like sa narrative or sa directing or sa documentary class, which a lot of them don't get published outside. Or maybe it's the lack of archiving and the lack of, admittedly, syempre, diba, like lack of funding din sa ating mga institutions and sa ating mga programs na hindi siya natutuloy. Pero I'm really excited and I hopefully makita din natin tong push from both sides, from the students and from the faculty na maybe this can be our bridge to generate more programs and more discussions with people.
I mean, in relation to the previous answer, so could you like operationalize? How do you imagine it just happening one version of that thought?
Siguro kasi this came from my thought na for the past month, I've been trying to get people to program a film screening sana for tawag dito. It was supposed to be a fundraiser for September 21. Tapos I wanted to organize film students and their documentaries para meron silang para magamit natin yung mga nagawa nating films for a bigger cause and ma-exhibit din yun. Pero since I was working alone and I was trying to talk to different people from different orgs and pati yung student council, ako yung medyo na burnout, so parang hindi ko siya masyadong natuloy.
It's always the problem.
Yes. Because of lack of manpower and lack of help. And I understand because a lot of people are busy.
Yeah.
Pero siguro if there's a way to make it
a collective.
A collective or make it easier para less bureaucratic yung process sa paghanap ng venue and organize ng things. I understand there are systems in place to make it official talaga. Pero maybe it'll make it more inviting to more students to perhaps participate and also organize themselves. Kasi I feel like it's an avenue for people to really engage.
Salamat. Yeah. Yes, please.
So, marami po akong thoughts, pero mas nag-focus ako more on the interdisciplinariness of film and yung pwede natin mangyari sa FI. And I'm thinking on how possible that would be considering, so yung following na sasabihin ko po ngayon is based on sa chismis na sinabi sa akin ng isang unnamed UPFI prof. Pero more on the political side ng mga colleges in particular kasi napapansin ko na minsan din nagtataka rin ako bakit si Fine Arts may sarili silang film na subjects at sariling film na tinuturo na completely separate sa FI. Bakit si Cal nagtuturo din on film history, sa popular na kultura yung subject na yun. And bakit I rarely see them intersect at all, na parang may sariling kanya-kanyang buhay siya. And I saw that manifested then in film prods where for some reason may discrimination daw for fine arts people na quote-unquote di daw nila alam mag-production design for some reason.
Ang film prods?
Narinig ko lang po haka-haka, chismis lang din po.
Away na to.
Pero, ayun.
Ingat ka paglabas mo dyan.
So, hindi po sa amin. Hindi po sa akin. Not me. I love my fine arts friends. Pero, ayun po. Meron naman po ako nakikitang efforts amongst the students sa interdisciplinary approach. Just last SEM po, nag-work on directing project po ako na kinuha yung past experiences niya sa ComSci. Sorry, nalimutan ka na. Pero in-integrate niya yun into the creation of her film. So ginawa niya parang interactive yung magiging dating ng film niya na may choices siya tapos meron siyang phone program na ginamit for it. And I feel na nakikita ko naman talaga yung parang interdisciplinary approach niya ng mga students. Although I'm very scared po if talagang, ako for sure, alam ko po hindi po ako aabot sa time na yun kasi hopefully, gagraduate na ako in the next year. Pero di ko po alam kasi how fast the institutional cooperation would be considering yung parang differences din po ng per college.
Ako, it will take institutional will talaga because the problem is systemic. The humanities is being phased out, right? The GE, ganon. So, systemic talaga because again, yung accreditation, di ba, yung marketization logic. So, it's going to be an uphill battle for ecosystem on arts and sciences ecosystem to actually exist. But perhaps pwede magsimula sa mga inuman ng mga teachers. Mga ganun na. But joke lang yan, no? Yeah. Institutional willpower is needed. Somebody to push it or a collective to push it. Like-minded collective to push it. Can start from students, etc. Or it can start from teachers. But kapagod din eh.
I was also just going to say na totoo naman na nangyari na yung interdisciplinarity sa trabaho ng mga tao, di ba? I mean, Prof. Adjani's work, no? So, yeah, but I think institutionally is the problem because it's paradigmatic, even in CMC alone. How to see things through very different lenses is prickly ba na parang and therefore you're asking them already to sort of cross this line.
Yeah.
Tapos
Let me share lang. For example, yung sa UP Film Archives, yung UCLA project, nako, may tension agad. Kasi pinabasa ko siya, Marcos, UN, yung Cold War, information. Siyempre, yung mga archivists at saka librarians, nakataas ng kilay sa akin. No, this is information. It should remain neutral. So the others can also interpret it. And I respect that. Kaya hindi ako archivist or librarian. I will do my own interpretation.
Hindi ganun prickliness. Yeah. So yun. Pero yun na nga. So at least sa loob ng FI, there's some kind of start happening. So we'll see where that will take us. We'll see na. Thank you.
But yeah, so it's good that you're
Kaya nga
kabilang kayo sa conversation because know that this is also being thought about. No?
And maybe siguro mag-address ako ng isang tanong kay Michael about, because when you conceptualize in 2012, it had websites, it had all that, the non-film part, and then eventually you brought it around in this very person-to-person, site-to-site place. So what is the thinking going on around that? Do you have training? Were you taught that way, or was it this your idea? The way that it's not the conventional process in line.
ME in film yun, Mike, di ba?
Yung
ME mo?
Ito, yung project. MFA, yeah.
MFA, film.
Yeah, film. Yeah, no, you're right. Kasi I guess it's what I was talking about in being an artist. You're existing in those gaps. That's part of it. You're trying to fill those gaps. I think that's such an important. But yeah, even when I was doing it, kasi nga, I shared some of it sa film. Like, this is not even art. This is not a film. Yung ganun, yung pag-propose ko nung idea, it's not even, hindi siya kasha dun sa ano.
So would you say, therefore, that you needed to sort of resist certain parameters?
I mean, it's an uphill battle. So much of it is communication and articulating what you're trying to do, really. I mean, that was my experience of it. And I think the fact na I studied philosophy and film at the same time. sa Rutgers. The only reason I did that, I really always wanted to do film since I was very, very young. I just wanted to make films. Sa Rutgers, walang film major. So, I was like, I have to pick a major. So, I took a philosophy class, yung baliwala lang, like, whatever, just on a lark. Tapos, I really enjoyed yung first class. Sabi ko, ito na lang major ko. Pero, I did not even realize na how impactful that experience would be in terms of actually I felt very sad nga kasi I was like I wanted to be a film major, walang film major dito, I have to do philosophy. And then I saw this interview on si Kurt Vonnegut, yung writer, he was being interviewed and advice niya sa mga young writers, sa mga young artists. And sabi niya, don't be stuck in thinking na what you're studying now as a young person is what you have to do. Kasi si Kurt Vonnegut was a biochem pala yung niya eh. Yeah, he's biochem. So sabi niya, I look to those students who are looking outside of the thing they're most passionate about. For me, it was always film. And I looked outside of it. And in ways na I didn't realize, it kind of helped shape. Kasi that's what people, when you present ideas that are different, I think it comes from there. So what you're talking about, everything you talked about, I think that's really the way to go. Exactly dun. Where real progress happens. Now, what you said is right, uphill battle siya. How do you go? I mean, talagang uphill battle siya. It's not something na I'm still trying to figure out then how to do it. Yeah.
Thank you. I was also thinking just along the lines of both your presentations as these are examples of creating these spaces that do not exist yet. Or have existed somewhat but in different configurations and therefore you're trying to enter through or recreate it. No? So, yeah, meron pa ba kayong gustong tanong or meron ka rin bang gustong tanong sa kanila? Yeah, okay, please.
Hello po. So for both of the speakers, thank you for the wonderful talks. No? Sobrang informative and of course nakaka-inspire lalo na for us future practitioners. Kay Ma'am Jaja, ang nag-stand out sa akin na you were handling very multiple projects at the same time for archives, which is really na-amaze ako. And for Sir Michael naman, no, yung innovation, lalo na at that time na ayun na nga naging ng so much virality itong Assyrian stairwell na ginawa niya. And yung na-notice ko is both works are may trajectory of bravery, kumbaga. So yung questions ko po for both speakers na to, very personal siya actually. Saan po nanggagaling yung bravery na to? And ano yung siguro ma-advise niyo for the filmmakers here na paano natin i-cultivate tong bravery? Ayun.
Ang ganda ng tanong, no? Because I suppose, what's under that question is, kapag hindi ka courageous sa work, you sort of play safe, do the same thing, imitate,
Yes, kasi
not try.
Napansin ko rin po ngayon sa scene ng filmmaking na ang art is nagsistem from inspiration. Like, wala namang, sinasabi nga walang original work. So, may tendency na maging very concentrated na yung mga themes and works. So, I think yun yung pwede na ma-take advantage sa rise nga ng technology, AI, all that. Ang dami ng programming, kumbaga, coding. So, ang dami ng innovations na pwedeng opportunities for us. Pero yung lagi kong tanong sa mga ganitong opportunities for us is yung bravery nga that comes into it. And it could be
may paralysis din.
Parang hesitation for us. So, ayun. Kami ma-advise po kayo for us and ma-share na personal hugot, ganon.
Mag-iisip pa raw si Jaja, so sa akin binigay yung mic. Paano kung mag-iisip pa rin ako? So, yeah, so actually it is a tough question kasi a lot of, especially kasi for me, yung approach ko, a lot of students who are artists are asking me questions na how do you get over the fear of being an artist? Exactly what you asked. So yung sagot ko is really geared towards part of what I talked about is what's your role as an artist, diba? I think like one of the things, I think yung duty ko, the way I see it as an artist, I'm trying to parang expose stories that are not being told or give points of view that are not being seen. I'm trying to paano ba to? So one of my film professors had a very really fascinating take on why he loves movies, on why he loves films. And this stuck with me. Kasi sabi niya, one of the things I love the most about movies is you get to borrow someone's brain for 2 hours. Parang, or however long the movie is, 30 minutes, I know. So for me, I'm like, I think when film is at its highest form, when you're really, at its highest level, is you're really getting to borrow someone's brain, and you get to experience how they feel, and you get to see the world the way they see it, hear the world the way they see it. That's what you're doing. And in a lot of ways, para sa akin, whether it's my own experiences na I'm trying to convey or other people's experiences, like that's my responsibility. So it's never about me. It's not, kasi a lot of times as an artist, the fear comes from paano I'm gonna look stupid or I'm gonna fail at this. Well, who's gonna tell that story? That story needs to be told. So for me, it's always like the fear kind of melts away when I see it as a duty na these things need to be talked about. So if not the artist, who else? Who else is gonna talk about these things? And if you're not doing it, you're not kind of living up to your duty. So for me, I don't know, maybe that's a convoluted way, pero that's actually how fear melts away for me. Na it's not about me na. I think a lot of artists get stuck on how am I gonna be perceived as an artist? Am I gonna live up to a certain idea of myself as an artist? It's not about you. What stories need to be told? What ideas need to be expressed? And it could be you who does it or her who does it, but it needs to be expressed. So someone's got to pick up that job. And that's how, for me, the fear melts away. Pertaining to art, yeah.
So, same.
Okay.
Kikwento ka lang. Napaisip tuloy ako, saan nga ba nagsimula? Saan ba nagsimula sa unang pelikula? As a filmmaker, no? At ang unang pelikula ko, guys, is my thesis. What I consider my first film. Of course, meron din ako mga class films. But I did a documentary about my family, my Muslim family. And that
or
was...
is a tender thing?
No. Walay. Walay. And it was pure, tawag nito? Yung ako. Parang wala halos akong reference eh. Nung time na yon, gumawa ng documentary patungkol sa Mindanao. Apparently, it's one of the first works made by a Mindanaoan, 2006, Walay. So I had no references, and I just did it because I wanted to tell that story. And it was small, and it remained small. But then, somebody saw it, and Kiri. And pinrogram niya sa isang film festival, Contra Agos, na pinalabas sa Shangri-La. And then it was watched by other people. At nagulat ako after ng screening, that small story about a small family in Cotabato, ang daming lumapit, nakipagkwentuhan. Apparently, it resonated. Something very intimate resonated. Because at that time, nangyari ang Patuan Massacre, and my thesis was about this political family. So same blueprint of abuse of power. So I think it's nagkaroon ng lakas kasi na-realize mo that it's not just you. It's the story that needs to be told. And I wanted na mauna rin si Mike, kasi gusto ko sabihin, gusto mo ba i-share? No, na kasama kami sa RESBAC. Noong 2016, when you went back here, so magkasama kami, RESBAC is a group of artists who were campaigning against the drug war. No, so I guess if you are already familiar that the moving image is actually very powerful, you will use it. At I guess yun yung intersection namin ni Michael. So you as film students, media practitioners, future, know that there's that power if you actually use it ng maayos and matalino. Salamat.
Thank you po.
Pwede ba mag-chuariwap comment dun sa dalawang comment na yun? Sige, okay lang, maupo ka. Well, what I actually see there na refrain ay, so don't think too much about yourself and then the film, but rather just, if you have to do it, then you have to do it. I think isa sa mga refrains din sa sarili ko naman klase, in line with trying to revision nga UPFI is, I think a lot of students think about the product, like, kailangan maganda yung film, kailangan. But both answers don't begin with kailangan maganda yung film. No? Of course, dapat maganda yung film. No? But that's not like, it seems the main goal for both in their answers. And what we are trying to also reimagine in the FI process is, or in the FI future is, process nga siya, diba? Not so much film products that you have to have after each, but rather to give so much importance on the process of making it. So, hindi nga masyadong mahalaga kung gaano ka perfect yung final thing. Eh. Ang napakahalaga ay maganda yung proseso. Yung proseso yung pinakamayaman. No? So that's what we've been wanting. At least ako yun yung stake ko dun dito sa ambag ng pag-revision. No? And I appreciate that both were saying, don't overthink like the perception of you or the perfect work or whatever, which will paralyze you. Diba? So the courage is really like, do it. Do it. If no one else is doing it, and you have to do it. Yeah, so meron pa ba kayong itanong? Or meron pa ba kayo rin na gusto sabihin?
Wala na, tapos na.
Tapos
tagal,
na ba?
No?
Oo nga, 4:00 na pala. Sorry, masyadong Maraming salamat.
Thank you so much.
Una, palakpakan naman natin ang ating mga panauhin. Okay, may konting ritual, Jaja lang.